Let's watch Espéra's presentation.
Museums are well protected. Sometimes museums are too protected, but protected from what? From who? Mostly protected from people and communities, but also, and we agree that museums need to be in a very safe spaces and controlled environments for the collection to remain for austerity. But what about prosperity? Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. My name is Espéra. I work for Ikorodu for the Youth in Africa program as a program officer. And today, I want to show you how through this particular program, youth and community are driving sustainability in Africa. In the last 5 years, through our program, Ikorodu initiate activities and projects on the continent to equip young people and also equip community to turn collection into living assets. And this helped museum to no longer remain a closed door, but space for innovation, empowerment, and sustainability. And how do we do it? And where do we do it? For instance, you go to Kenya today, at Nairobi Museum, we establish within Nairobi Museum a youth hub. This youth hub helps to empower young people in Nairobi in Kenya to drive change using museums collections. At the same time, also in Kenya, at Ileret, we empower young women, local women in Ileret, in northern Kenya, to use collections as living asset for sustainable future. But how? Women design crafts, community are engaged in science and creativity, and this is how collections become engine for sustainable future in Africa. This is the case for Kenya. We can expand more, but down we go to South Africa. With Iziko Museum of South Africa, we use heritage innovation for prosperity for the country, engaging young people with skills to come and get new skills. Those skills help young people to become even more employable in heritage sector, not only, but also in creative industries, creating jobs for young people, also supporting digital inclusion, and also broaden museum collections access. And those showing that innovation can open doors for them, that digitalization and new skills collections become pathway to employability, digital inclusion, and prosperity. And this is what we'll be doing through this program, to prove that when collections are collected to people, they become driver of change. And the youth and communities across Africa are using a transform museum into engine for sustainable future through SDG 4, SDG 8, SDG 11. We can even add SDG 17 because we are creating partnership between different institutions, between communities, and between people. And I thank you so much for your attention. Should we need further clarification, please send us email. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Espéra. We look forward to continue the conversation in the Q&A session. So moving on to the next presentation by Gaitán, we'll hear insights from a global survey exploring how professionals in the cultural and creative industries view their collaboration with collections-based organizations. The findings reveal the powerful educational and creative potential of heritage collections and highlight new opportunities for joint action aligned with the SDGs. If you have questions again for the speakers, please don't forget to add them into the Q&A box. Let's watch Mar's presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this amazing conference. My name is Gaitán, and I'm a senior researcher at the University of Valencia. And today I'm going to present you Cultural Wealth, Leveraging Collection and CCIs for Sustainable Development. This work explores the potential of partnerships between cultural institutions and creative professionals to drive meaningful change toward the sustainable development goals. First of all, what are cultural creative industries? Well, they are generally understood as sectors that produce goods and services based on cultural, artistic, and creative content. They include areas such as visual arts, design, advertising, film, publishing, etc. But more importantly, beyond its economic impact, creative industries foster innovation, enhance cultural diversity, and contribute to social cohesion. This study explores how CCIs and museums can collaborate to support sustainable development. This study had three goals. First of all, to understand what creative professionals expect from museums, to explore how CCIs can contribute to preserving and activating those collections, and to assess how these collaborations can support the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I conducted a global survey distributed between July and December in 23. I collected 151 respondents from the 5 UNESCO regions, and I had to perform a quantitative and qualitative methodology. As you can see, the questions were from Likert scales to closed and open questions. Here you have the table referring to each of those questions. First of all, respondents were primarily aged between 21 and 40 years old, with strong representation from Europe, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. Visual and performing arts dominated the professional profiles, showing a wide interest in cultural engagement. As I said, the first part of the survey was about from GLAMs to CCIs. Interestingly, regular engagement with museums was highest in Europe and Latin America. Respondents in Africa and the Arab states showed less frequent interaction but expressed growing interest. How do creatives prefer to engage with GLAMs, which refers not only to museums but also to galleries, libraries, and archives? Most respondents visit them alone or with a partner. However, in Africa and Asia, family and group visits were more common, pointing to community-based engagement models. When asked what do they expect from these GLAMs, the top responses included accessibility, inspiration, creativity, and education. For them, GLAMs are not just places to preserve the past, but also they are platforms for critical thinking, imagination, and inclusive dialogue. Here you can see the workloads for each UNESCO region. When asked from CCIs to GLAMs, over 70% of respondents had collaborated with a GLAM or wished to do so. Their contribution ranged from exhibition design and audience engagement to digital storytelling and educational programming. CCIs see themselves as co-creators of meaning with museums. They don't just offer content, but they help to interpret, contextualize, and make collections more relevant to diverse audiences. In this regard, they think their objectives can be aimed at creating community engagement or to improve cultural districts of their locality. But again, what has to do this with sustainability? Well, this has to do a lot. Respondents widely acknowledge the role of GLAMs in achieving the SDGs, but also they recognize how the importance of CCIs in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Let me highlight three of them. For example, CCIs can contribute to SDG number 4, SDG 8, Sustainable Cities, or SDG 13, Climate Action. These are one of their sort to say most interesting answers, but they were a lot. For example, they say that they can build bridges between GLAMs and the grassroots organizations. Also, they say that museum collections are learning materials through which design students can learn to approach the past critically and creatively. They can raise awareness, but they also can help to popularize SDG and concept ground roots. In general, respondents call museum bridges between the past and the future. They ask for more openness to digital tools, co-creation, and underrepresented voices, which is highly important. But also regional variations emerge. For example, in Europe and Latin America show high institutional involvement, whereas in Africa and the Arab states, they highlighted the need for more access and opportunity. To wrap up, museums and creative industries, and sorry again, not only museums, but also galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, are natural allies in sustainable development. There is a strong foundation for collaborative frameworks. To do so, we can foster long-term GLAM CCI partnerships, integrate them in planning, prioritize inclusive SDG-aligned projects, and support regional capacity building and co-creation. These pictures are the examples of the liaison between CCIs and textile museums, for example. In any case, thank you for your attention. And this is not just a study, it's a call to action. If we want our cultural institutions to remain relevant and resilient, collaboration with creative industries must be at the heart of their mission. I'm happy to take your questions and hear your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Mar. So we'll continue that conversation in the Q&A session when she'll be joining us live. So moving on to the next presentation, in which Arepa Morehu challenged us to rethink prosperity through the lens of indigenous-led collections work. Drawing on a recent collections-based initiative at the Auckland Museum in New Zealand, the presentation highlights how cultural heritage can foster well-being, ecological stewardship, and intergenerational knowledge, offering a richer, more inclusive vision of sustainable development. Again, if you have questions, please pop them in the Q&A panel. So let's watch Arepa's presentation.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko te Arepa Morehu tōku ingoa, he tūmaki Māori ahau ki tāmaki Paenga Hira. My name is Arepa Morehu, and I'm the tūmaki Māori at Auckland Museum. Greetings to you all. It's a privilege to speak on collections and prosperity. When we talk about prosperity, it's tempting to think of numbers, GDP, visitor numbers, revenue. I want to take a quick step back. At the museum, we took some time to look at our strategic direction to 2029, which is called Te Ara Moana. Te Ara Moana is a tāniko pattern utilized in Māori weaving. This showcases the journey that we at Auckland Museum are on, and this has opened up some gateways. So back to prosperity. Prosperity in many indigenous worldviews, including that of Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, tangata whenua, people of the land, of Tāmaki Makaurau, of Auckland. Prosperity is measured differently. It's about relationships, cultural vitality, and collective strength, much like a slogan from Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, Te pai me te whairawa o Tāmaki, the prosperity of Tāmaki. At the start of this year, 2025, Auckland Museum opened an exhibition called Ko Au Ko Ngāti Whātua. I am Ngāti Whātua. An exhibition of taonga, treasured items, and kōrero, narratives of Ngāti Whātua, and many dimensions of prosperity were at the heart of the concept. This was not a story told about the iwi, the tribe. It was told by the iwi, the tribe. And in doing so, it showed how heritage collections can support prosperity across 4 dimensions of well-being. Firstly, oranga ahurea, cultural well-being. Ngāti Whātua held autonomy over their own stories. Control over narrative strengthens identity. It revitalizes language and keeps whakapapa or genealogy alive. Number 2, oranga tangata, social well-being. Kaumātua, elders, pakeke, adults, rangatahi, youth, co-curated, bridging generations and ensuring knowledge flows forward. Number 3, oranga ohanga, economic well-being. Local iwi-led curation, engaging local creatives, supporting the local economy which aligns with cultural values. Number 4, oranga taiao, environmental well-being. Whenua, the land, moana, the sea, and taiao, the environment, we're at the heart, reminding us that environmental stewardship is not a goal. It is a living responsibility. In reflection, this work reframed prosperity, not just revenue, not just visitor numbers, but revitalized language, strengthened relationships, a living connection to place. From a sustainability development goals perspective, this project has essentially tied into sustainable cities and communities, life on land, quality education, responsible consumption and production, and decent work and economic growth. The lessons from Ko Ngāti Whātua. Indigenous perspectives shift sustainability goals from outputs to outcomes that matter. When iwi lead the narrative, collections become vehicles for empowerment. And last, partnerships between iwi, museums, designers, curators, educators amplify impact. Hei whakakapi in closing, as we imagine collections 2030 and beyond, let's expand how we measure prosperity. Let's count the empowered youth, the reconnected elders, the thriving creative economies, the restored environments, because prosperity is not just about what we preserve. It's about what we make possible. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Okay, big thanks to Te Arepa for such an inspiring presentation. So we hope to have him joining us for the live Q&A session shortly. So now we move on to the next lightning talk by Mogbolahan Idris Ajala, which showcases the Ikorodu Cultural Heritage Trail in Nigeria, an inspiring example of how heritage collections, community engagement, and cross-sector partnerships can drive and support sustainable tourism, create jobs, and promote also environmental stewardship in alignment with the SDGs. So if you have questions for Mo and also for the other speakers, again, please put them in the Q&A panel so that we'll have a richer discussion after the presentations. Let's watch Mo's presentation now.
Hi, my name is Mogbolahan Ajala, popularly called or known as Mo. I'm an architect and urban planner with over 16 years working experience across Nigeria. I started out working at the regional level in Lagos. I moved up to the federal level working in Abuja, and I've now operate as a consultant who advises federal and subnational governments across Nigeria. I'm very happy to talk about the connection and the bridge between tangible and intangible heritage urban landscape in Nigeria, which is pretty much the work that we do at IGA Nigeria Limited. At IGA Nigeria Limited, we are an urban planning and public infrastructure consultancy where we advise public sector, advise local communities, and we particularly focus on collation, documentation, digitization of the vast intangible and tangible heritage landscape. We're very particular about things like festivals, shrines, heritage routes, heritage storytelling, the built environments in heritage, and particularly ensuring that communities can engage. And one key major milestone for our work is that we've been working with the federal government and Lagos State to design a UNESCO framework in Nigeria. Based on this UNESCO connection, we have identified Ikorodu community, which is one of 5 divisions or boroughs in Lagos State, as our host community, because Ikorodu portends one of the most organized, intangible heritage constructs, traditional constructs in Nigeria. And we have done this through the European Diaspora Facility Program, which is an intervention by the EU in partnership with the Nigerian government, particularly to identify how to define what intangible material culture can be. We know, particularly because we have identified this approach based on the existing festivals, which are over 50 plus, with over 92 festival communities, which give us about 1,000 custodians, that is, different people practicing different aspects of local community. So the material collection looks at festival structures, looks at the elements of the structures. So we've built a framework around the structures to monitor and evaluate this material collections. Remember, the material collections here are the tangibles from the intangible, which means the elements of festivals, attires, artifacts, physical sites. And in the framework, what we've identified is a proper working monitoring system where at the federal level, we've got the NCMM who's responsible for properly regulating documentation processes, whereas at the subnational level, we've got the implementer in terms of the subnational tools, the local land use policies, and at the local level, we've got the custodians, the beneficiaries, who are the ones practicing without the subnational and national tools. So our real role is to have this working group, we call, of a framework, which goes about monitoring and measuring using the Ikorodu as a proper construct. So our engagement approach and prosperity metric with this project is more of a consultant-custodian relationship where we're very collaborative and participatory. What that means is that we've been given unwavering access. I mean, again, myself and my team do have unwavering access into the community to literally bring in stakeholders. So we're able to work with the subnational, national, international partners and stakeholders to really allow them understand the rich heritage landscape. As we've mentioned, the prosperity expectations now become how are we able to use these tools, these skills, these resources to promote Ikorodu as a rich heritage tourism destination. I mean, it's so amazing that as I speak to you, we're currently working towards the art season in Lagos, arts and culture season, which starts in late September up until the new year. As I speak to you now, we're planning a parade in November to showcase the rich cultural heritage with other stakeholders and partners towards our usual Dirty December. At this point, I really want to invite everyone on this call to come to Lagos and enjoy December. Ekabo.
Thanks to Mo for the invitation and for the practical and very concrete examples, inspiring too. So he's going to be joining us shortly for the discussion. So we'll now move on to the next presentation by Igor Stefanovic at UN Tourism, who will be sharing how heritage collections must evolve to meet the needs of future generations in terms of becoming more inclusive, more accessible, and sustainable. So Igor's presentation highlights the role of tourism, community engagement, and cross-sector partnership in safeguarding heritage while promoting equity, innovation, and long-term resilience. So let's watch Igor's presentation.
The importance of heritage collections for the cultural tourism sector is immense. Normally in our sector, we measure the success of tourism and also the success of cultural institutions by the visitor numbers. But there are also many other indicators beyond the economic criteria that would define how cultural institutions and heritage collections, museums, libraries, archives can also bring along more prosperity to the local communities. How can they be beneficial first for the communities and host communities in which they're placed, but then the visitors who will come, because visitors come and go, but we need to make sure that the heritage collections are made sustainable for future generations of the local communities first. When it comes to heritage collections, we should think about some of the pending challenges that we have in our sector. That's why UN Tourism is promoting accessible, responsible, and inclusive cultural tourism that also needs to trickle down to the heritage collections, which should be part of the tourism experience. We should change the narratives in many museums because originally they were kind of the Western concept of the high culture, but we should have more indigenous stories, the stories of cultures that used to be sometimes denigrated or even looked down by some other sectors that should be more present in the heritage collections. For example, indigenous cultures in the global south. There are also indigenous cultures in the global north, but in the global south, there are millions of people who pertain to indigenous peoples. We should also make heritage collections more accessible. We should apply more universal design principles, because it's not only about adapting the physical access to institutions and heritage collections to make them more adapted to people with physical disabilities. It's about a broader concept of making these institutions accessible also for people with any other specific access requirement and the seniors and people with cognitive impairments, because this is a huge demographic group that sometimes is kind of cut out from the museum and heritage collection visits. We should also think about the responsible management of museums by the local authorities, by the governments, by the destinations and cultural heritage experts, and also people in charge of tourism planning, where it's key to have partnerships, because some of the museums that have focus on the urban areas, which is kind of normally the main magnet for tourism flows, have major visitor management issues because they're located in extremely popular destinations that sometimes have this worrying concept that we call, under inverted commas, over tourism, that just requires better management. But the institutions cannot tackle this problem on their own. We need partnerships in order to make these institutions prosperous for future generations. Thank you. I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks to Igor for the presentation. We look forward to the discussion too. And to close our series of lightning talks, we'll turn now to a powerful story from Colombia. This presentation by Juana Alicia Ruiz will be delivered in Spanish, as I mentioned before. So I kindly remind the attendees if you need to activate the available translated captioning resources. We'll hear how women from Māmpūhan in Colombia transformed their tapestry making from a form of healing into a vibrant artistic and social movement. These tapestries, now at the heart of the Museum of Art and Memory of Māmpūhan, honor the memory of a community that's been deeply affected by violence, while driving local development through circular fashion, cultural tourism, and culinary heritage. So the presentation shows how collections can do more than preserve. They can build resilience, dignity, and sustainable futures. So let's watch the presentation.
Estás a punto de iniciar tu recorrido por el Museo de Arte y Memoria de Māmpūhan.
En esta zona donde estamos precisamente, hacía unos 2 kilómetros, que es donde inicia el arroyo llamado Māmpūhan, que existía un cacique que llamaban Māmpūhan, el cacique indígena, y de ahí surge el nombre de Māmpūhan. Y allí fue forjando la comunidad a su desarrollo basado a las actividades y prácticas agrícolas y pecuarias. Es una comunidad campesina, está ubicada en medio de 2 arroyos. Recuerdo que se celebraban fiestas patronales, había una articulación de Māmpūhan con las demás comunidades aledañas, como la brisa, la bonga. Aquí Māmpūhan se convirtió como un epicentro de intercambio de productos.
Una institución que es producto de la primera sentencia proferida por el marco de la Ley de Justicia y Paz.
Este es el número que identifica la primera sentencia de justicia y paz en el país, que ordenó al Estado colombiano reparar integralmente a la comunidad de Māmpūhan con varias medidas, entre otras la construcción del Museo de Arte y Memoria de Māmpūhan.
Después de hacer todo el recorrido de apaciguamiento, de buscar de pronto un sitio de descanso y todas esas cosas, con la llegada de la ley 975 de 2005, en el 2006 comenzamos nosotros un proceso de búsqueda, de solución. Quisimos comenzar un proceso que nos llevara a la reclamación de nuestros derechos.
La existencia de este museo es un ejemplo de lo que puede pasar cuando una comunidad se mantiene unida y trabaja y lucha por el bien común. Han sido muchos los líderes de Māori que han promovido la iniciativa de este museo para que nunca olvidemos ese episodio de nuestra memoria nacional, pero sobre todo para que aprendamos de la resiliencia de estas mujeres y hombres que han luchado por más de 20 años por volver a sentirse seguros al recorrer su territorio. Para los miembros de esta comunidad, la consolidación de este museo significa
ese sueño de hacer memoria, ese sueño de levantarnos, fue poco a poco surgiendo. Fue una idea, una sentencia, una piedra, un lote, un premio nacional de paz. Y hoy en día tenemos una casa grande soñada.
Para mí el museo es muy significativo, ya que ahí miro la lucha, la perseverancia de un pueblo que vivió la guerra de conflicto armado y no solo se quedó allí, sino que vivió con la esperanza y la lucha que Māori podía salir adelante en medio de esta guerra, en medio de este conflicto. Representa esperanza, representa vida, porque ahí está representada las vivencias y costumbres de nuestro pueblo.
El Museo de Māori significa la reivindicación de las luchas que tuvieron nuestros líderes después del desplazamiento, por conseguir un lugar especial, cómodo, seguro, para poder preservar la memoria. El Museo de Arte y Memoria de Māori ha sido una bendición, un logro. Después de tantas luchas, sé que es una bendición porque allí se abordaría la memoria.
Hacerlo posible es gracias al esfuerzo de hombres y mujeres que vencieron la desesperanza. Es gracias a las tejedoras que con su arte Māori ha recorrido el mundo entero.
Significa mucho porque el estar en la preparación, en la estructuración del guión curatorial, uno empieza a analizar, observar, investigar los hechos del por qué se dan, el tema del desplazamiento en Māori.
Pues es mirar el sueño cumplido, es saber que el esfuerzo y el sacrificio que hemos hecho durante mucho tiempo pues tiene resultados, y es mirar materializado por un sueño.
Significa resiliencia, paz, historia, tranquilidad y amor.
Durante tu recorrido podrás adentrarte en la diversidad natural y cultural de la región de los Montes de María, conocer los hechos que teñieron de dolor y miedo a las gentes de este territorio, la ruptura de los lazos de solidaridad y el significado de tener que vivir en un lugar ajeno. Sobre todo, la resiliencia de esta comunidad, que fue capaz de volver a empezar en un nuevo espacio y trabajando en la sanación de sus heridas a través del arte y convirtiéndose en un ejemplo de construcción de paz. A través de su colección conocerás las historias y memorias de este territorio, la crueldad y el sufrimiento que el conflicto generó en miles de familias colombianas. El Museo de Arte y Memoria de Māori no solo representa el triunfo de esta comunidad, sino el triunfo de la conservación de nuestra memoria colectiva para las generaciones presentes y futuras. Un espacio para la reparación simbólica y la justicia restaurativa como eje central en la región de los Montes de María. Bienvenidos a Māori. Y no olvides que en Māori
Okay, so a big thanks to all of our presenters for the thought-provoking and inspiring contributions. So